What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and I want to use a pretty new point to highlight an old issue I used to have that kind of has gone away after all this time. Looking back on my original point though, it would still be half right and half wrong. We'll get to that now in a minute. So, what do I want to talk about and why do I feel this is important? Well, the Crash Bandicoot Trilogy, the N Sane Trilogy that released as what we believe to be a timed exclusive on PlayStation 4, has done gangbusters in sales. It's done extremely well, and it really highlights the fact that people want, essentially, backwards compatibility and or remasters. I realize playing original Crash Bandicoot versus playing Crash Bandicoot 1 in the N Sane Trilogy. By the way, I haven't got a chance to play it yet. My one hasn't shipped yet from Amazon. GG Amazon. I only ordered it a little few days ago. You know, where is it? But anyway, back to the point. So, there's a little bit of a difference from playing the original versus playing this remastered version. But people obviously remember Crash Bandicoot, they remember the character, they remember the games, and they were obviously fondly loved. And many people out there have gone and actually bought the N Sane Trilogy, as illustrated by the fact that it's the biggest UK entertainment launch this year. Previously had been Horizon Zero Dawn, and this game has even beaten Horizon Zero Dawn when it comes to launch week sales, which is pretty good considering that it's a trilogy remaster versus, well, to be honest, Horizon Zero Dawn didn't look that great to me. I hear good things about it, but it just doesn't appeal to me. But that doesn't matter for what I'm about to say here now anyway. So when you look at that, when you look at the fact that Crash Bandicoot has done the sales that it's done now, and that it's even prompted one of the high up guys, I believe it was the CEO of Activision, to actually come out and potentially tease more Crash Bandicoot games just because of the sheer interest in the trilogy collection. Because if millions of people are buying this game, chances are millions of people probably want a new Crash Bandicoot game in the same vein as this one. So that makes perfect sense. Now, where am I going with this? Well, as I mentioned a minute ago, it shows that people want the old games they know and love. So it really highlights the fact that not consoles, but gamers want backwards compatibility. Gamers want remasters, and gamers want virtual console. I realize you could probably call virtual console backwards compatibility, but whatever. I'm breaking them into three separate groups because one is remasters, two, backwards compatibility. I'm looking at the likes of your physical versions of games, and then virtual console. You're looking at your downloadable titles, preferably of like 15 plus years before. So this is an absolute stark contrast from what we saw a few years ago. In fact, one of the things that you would originally find on my channel was me complaining, this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, just after I first started, on YouTube at least anyway, that the majority of stuff we'd see as announcements were not new game announcements. They were not talking about new games in development. They were not talking about new games just about to enter development, just being announced for the first time. The majority of stuff we saw for the longest period of time was remaster announcements. You'd go for what felt like months of not getting any new announcements. Now, there probably was some in there, but it just didn't feel like it at the time, because the remaster announcements would outnumber real, proper, big-name games or games that people were interested in announcements by, like, maybe 5 to 1. It was a pretty bleak time, because we all remember the early days of the Xbox One and the early days of the PlayStation 4, where you'd have a big game announcement, then you'd have 6 months of remaster announcements, then you'd have another big game announcement, rinse and repeat. And it pissed a lot of people off, because a lot of people, myself included, were like, hey, I just bought this €500 console, or €400 console in the case of a PlayStation 4, and they were thinking, so what, I bought all these things to play one new current gen game every 6 months, and then just rebuy old games at a better resolution or frame rate or graphics or whatever, just because you're not making anything new? For fuck's sake. And yes, of course, I'm not completely oblivious to the fact there are some great remasters, and I suppose you could call them updated ports at the same time, of, previous generation games, and, even further back than a single generation remaster or whatever it was. So that's obviously a good thing now when it comes to the correlation of what gamers seem to want. We all know there's the whole thing lately with Xbox 360 backwards compatibility, where Microsoft put out a lot of the numbers and the data about how many people have played games, how many hours these people have actually spent. And on top of that, there's the announcement of the OG Xbox backwards compatibility on Xbox One coming soon. So it's clear that we'll call it a market or a desire or whatever it is for things like this. Even if it's backwards compatibility, if it's the virtual console, which Nintendo don't seem to want to give us on Nintendo Switch, God knows how that's going to work, because if they do it properly, it would literally make millions of dollars in a single day, millions of euro in a single day, because there's so many people out there that want access to Nintendo's proper old school wealth of games. But that's a whole other rant or two. So it really goes to show. I mean, as I mentioned a minute ago, there are a number of great ports and remasters out there. The Last of Us Remastered, I was kind of annoyed about that because of its, we'll call it, what was it, close turnaround time on its actual remastering. I believe it was remastered a year after launch. It was a bit dodgy, when it came to stuff like that. But of course, it ended up being a very good remaster. It looks great. It performs really well. It's almost a locked 60 FPS. So it's great. It's a great game, and to be able to play it again in a better quality is nice. You've got other games as well, like say Valkyria Chronicles Remastered, a game which I'm playing the PC version of, which I suppose you could technically call a remaster right now, because it didn't launch. It didn't launch anywhere near the original PS3 version, and it works really well with the engine on the PC. But there's so many other games. I won't even get into the list of them. I will mention one or two though, just for argument's sake. The Master Chief Collection, despite its matchmaking problems and all that as well, it's a great remaster when you look at what they've actually done with the games themselves. It would be nice if Halo 2 ran at a full 1080p 60 FPS, but apparently some concessions had to be made. Why that has to happen on a 2013 console to run a 2004 game properly, but yeah, I digress. And of course, Persona 4 Golden, one of the arguably best games that has ever been remastered. We'll call P4G a remaster because it's a almost HD-ified, because yes, the Vita's not HD, remember, version of the PS2 game that runs and looks a bit better, and they've added in some new extra content, and that game is so amazingly good that I can only thank them with how much I wanted it, because God knows how long it would have taken me to get around to playing the PS2 version, but P4G on the Vita, that was a whole other story. I was kind of hyped up in anticipation for that. So there's a number of remasters and games and all, ports, remasters, whatever you want to call them. I include ports in there too, because when you look at Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, for example, versus standard Mario Kart 8, it's got a resolution increase, very, well, we call it a minor resolution increase. It goes from 720p to 1080p. It fixes the one little issue that had the occasional frame drop to 59 FPS to keep it at a locked 60, and it adds one or two small new features, and I suppose the battle mode. But I'd more so call that a port than a remaster, but you get what I'm aiming at. There's so many good remasters out there. The Shadow of the Colossus, we're looking down the barrel of another remaster or potentially remake. It's hard to say which one that will actually be, if it's just going to be a remaster or a remake. I haven't watched the trailer, but I've heard about it, to be honest. But you see my point. There's so many good remasters and so many good ports, whatever we call them, out there, that it really shows that the consumers want what they want. And apparently they want to play great games no matter what console generation they were from. If they were back from the PS1, which, I suppose you could arguably call the N Sane Trilogy a remake, because it's not really a remaster. But you see, I'm getting into splitting hairs here. Where do we draw the line between a remake and a remaster and a port or an enhanced port, whatever? So I'm going to stay back off that. But people seem to want these games that they love, be it in the same quality, be it in the better quality, or be it in a remaster remade quality. Whatever it is, they seem to want this. And these companies, some of them, seem to slowly be coming around to actually giving us what we want as consumers and as gamers. between publishers and developers announcing new remasters, announcing new ports, announcing new enhanced ports, announcing new remakes completely. They're getting along with that. And of course, then you have Nintendo, who won't give us the Virtual Console for some nondescript reason. Hopefully we still do get it, but they're just being very, very weird about it, and it makes me worry with their whole subscription service and access to retro game and all. But it just goes to show, what do you think? Because I know I was very against remasters back in the day. As I mentioned in this video already, I was very against them. To an extent. I wasn't always completely 100% against them, because yes, I would pick and choose my battles, because there was always that one game that I'd like, and there's one game I'd give a pass for, or whatever it was, just because I loved it. But the point is, what do you see remasters in 2017 and ports and all now in 2017 versus when we were getting plagued by them? And they were the majority of what was coming out back in, I suppose you could call it late 2013, 2014, and hell, even up to maybe 2015, ports and remasters were still a big deal. Sure, they're still few and far between at the moment, and we're still getting them, but they're nowhere near as the main focus almost of what these consoles were now. Because like I said, previously you had your big game out, then you had like February, March, April, May, June, July, August of just remasters and small games, and then you had the big game season at the end, the big Christmas rush when all the big ones come out, and that's a whole other market. So what do you think about it anyway? Because I'm curious to know, especially now that the Crash Bandicoot, whatever you call them, N Sane Trilogy has shed some light on all of this. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the rest of the videos in my channel.